Welcome to the Marketing Boost Solutions Podcast. Join host Marco Torres, along with expert guests, as they deliver incredible, proven solutions to your marketing challenges in each power-packed episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Boost Solutions Podcast. Today we have a powerhouse guest in-house in the world of leadership, team dynamics, and business psychology. If you ever wondered how the world's biggest companies like Apple, Google, Sony, and the BBC build high-performance teams and drive massive success, then this episode is for you. Joining us is Jeff Harnois, the visionary CEO of iBridged, a company that's revolutionizing leadership and team performance at the highest levels with a track record of transforming Fortune 500 organizations. Jeff specializes in using behavioral science, psychometrics, and advanced operational modeling to unlock human potential and drive business results. Today, we're diving deep into how psychology shapes buying behavior and decision-making in business. 2, the secrets of accessing prospects and adapting sales strategies based on personality types. The cutting-edge techniques Jeff and his team use to help leaders and teams rise above the chaos and uncertainty. Whether you're a business owner, sales leader, or entrepreneur looking to elevate your leadership game and close more deals, you won't want to miss this conversation. So buckle up and get ready for a masterclass in high-performance leadership and sales psychology. Jeff, say hello.
Marco, it is a pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks so much for the invitation.
You kidding? I'm thrilled to have you. We talked a while back about putting this show together and sat on a call together, talked about your background, my background. That was a lot of fun. Speaking of your, I recall your diving background and mine as well as a diver around the world. Just for people to get to know your personal life a little bit, tell us a little bit about that, what you do in diving and how you've been a diver for, traveling around the world with that.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a passion of mine. My wife and I, we'll be celebrating our 41st wedding anniversary this month. We plan all of our vacations around diving. So yeah, that's a passion of ours. We've dove in places like Malaysia and Taiwan. Certainly Mexico and Hawaii is always a favorite of ours.
That's awesome. I wish I had. My wife is not a diver, so it doesn't make it that easy to say, yeah, let's plan all these trips around it. And so when I do, I got to find a buddy or on my own. So yeah, it ends up being I don't dive as often as I'd like to.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting into business here and your amazing background here and the type of clients that you guys support. You've worked with some of the highest name brands in business, Apple, Google, Sony, and more. What are some of the biggest leadership challenges you see even at that level?
Yeah, and I would frame that also as in the terms of biggest leadership challenges, but also the most common leadership challenges. And they are almost always centered around the same things, which is, strong leaders have very distinct leadership styles that not everyone is attracted to, or sometimes not always effective. And so often the work that we do is we start with helping the leader understand, sort of break down, do some diagnostics around what is their leadership type and style. Then we also look at their team and say, well, what does the team actually need? And then we help the leader make those adaptations for maximum effectiveness.
That sounds pretty complicated on how you put that together for folks. How does iBridge use behavioral and operational modeling to transform teams and leadership? Or can you kind of simplify that in simple English for those of us that are not up at your pay grade?
Yeah, I think to simplify it, think of it as having a common behavioral model. So one that we would all agree on is the right way to behave when we show up on our teams. Another way that I think about that sometimes is maybe a social contract, which we're all familiar with. We all live and operate in social contracts as part of society, meaning, when light turns red, we stop, and that's a common behavior. And because we know that, we can predict people's behavior, and that's how we interact and we stay safe with each other. That social contract, we do that same thing, but for teams using behavioral models. And the particular behavioral model that we use on a frequent basis is actually modeled from an author named Patrick Lencioni. Patrick wrote a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, which is celebrating its 20th year anniversary. It is a timeless model that it seems to cross generation and all of the social categories, if you will: sex, gender, race, culture. It transcends all of those things, and it allows us to focus on on good and healthy behaviors, so that we can sort of set that stuff aside and focus on the things that really matter, that help us win in business.
Now, this might be a little off track. I'm just curious, in the business world today, in your world of leadership, how has DEI affected the larger companies that have tried to implement those? Has it helped, hurt the leadership and company? Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, do you have any experience on that subject? And what are your thoughts on how companies have used it, implemented it, and now take many of them getting rid of it? How does that affect large companies like that have implemented those type of strategies?
Yeah. This is such a good, deep, and becoming a controversial topic. And you're asking about my opinion on it, so I'm gonna honor the request and share some perspectives on it. DEI, I think, is really well intentioned, and I think when it's executed, really, really good things happen. But what I've seen in many large organizations is that the intention is right, but the execution is wrong. And let me explain that just a little bit. When we think about people coming from different backgrounds and cultures, what that means is they're going to have different perspectives, they're going to have different ideas. And so it's a really good thing to do, to have that kind of mixture, that diversity, not only in background and culture, but the diversity of ideas and perspectives and opinions about how things are. It allows us to have way more cultural sensitivity in terms of product offerings and how we go to market and how we speak to customers and all of that. But where organizations get it wrong is, at the executive levels, they've set up what you might consider as quota systems. We need to have certain percentages of certain classifications of people to be considered successful. Okay, good that you've got a target, good that you've got a goal, and also good that you've got a measurement component to know how you're progressing. But for many organizations, that's sort of the end. And they pat themselves on the back when they hit their numbers and they say, look, we've done a good thing here because we're more diverse. What they've failed to execute against, though, is to create environments and cultures where people who are coming in with diverse backgrounds have a seat at the table, right? And the work that we do, especially when we're using psychometrics, the word psychometric means the measurement of psychology. When we bring that to play, and then when we bring behavioral models into play, which I said earlier, it sort of supersedes all of the stratification by audiences. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your culture is. Everyone can have a seat at the table because we've got common behaviors that we've standardized on. And now we've created a welcoming environment where people can belong, where having that diversity isn't seen as something like odd or problematic or not helpful. It's a welcomed addition to the conversation and the process. And I think that's where a lot of really large companies have sort of dropped the ball on that execution state. So is it a good thing? It's certainly the right idea. But I think that oftentimes, and I'll wrap up with this segment, what starts out as the right idea and a good thing can turn into a very high conflict outcome if the table isn't set correctly. And I think that's where organizations are getting it wrong today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And sorry to put you on the spot with a kind of a controversial political question, so to speak. But yeah, I get it because as you say, the quotas seems to be probably the heart of the potential problems that can come with it. Being, that you're turning away people based on diversity and so on. And when the idea is just make sure you have a good mix without anyway, moving on from that subject, but I appreciate that because it becomes to create or potentially creates a chaos of the community or the office camaraderie or what have you, because it's just not set properly or not implemented properly. What are the most common mistakes organizations make when trying to build high performance teams? And yeah, what's the best way to do that? I mean, you're trying to build teams within your organization. You want them to be high performers. You want them to maybe somewhat compete with each other or that's one strategy on it. I worked for a company that it was kind of like silos that competed with each other, which had some value, but also created other problems. So what are the most common, in trying to build these high performance teams? What are mistakes most businesses make or many make?
Yeah, again, I think at the highest level, and then sort of the more common problems that are occurring today is that organizations are so focused on the outcomes, setting the bar, setting these really great goals, but not paying attention enough to the human dynamics and the interpersonal connections that need to be in place to really achieve them. Um, that it's very interesting because I'm working with a client right now who's struggling with this very thing. And what I'm about to sort of reveal to their executive leadership is you are hyper focused on the end result. I think of this in a doctor patient type of relationship. The doctor is so focused on the disease that there's no focus on the patient.
Hmm.
And we've got to get leadership looking at both. What's the problem, but what's the people component of that? What's the human component of that? How do we bring them both up to an elevated state? And so there's this rebalancing, I think, or maybe recalibrating would be a word that I would use from a leadership perspective to say, yes, we must stay razor focused on the results and the outcomes and setting those goals, but we've got to carve out some time, some attention, and maybe even some investment for the patient who's going to get us there. The analogy that comes to mind is, you're the coach of a track and field team, and your best sprinter, broke a leg, has experienced a wound or an injury. You didn't treat the break, but you expected the runner to remain competitive. So you still have that goal of winning, but you haven't addressed the wound. And now you want them to be even more competitive because people are faster, but you haven't treated the wound. And so organizations have to have the awareness, I think, first of all, you have to focus on the patient a little, and then they have to have the will to do it. And for many leadership teams, that rethinking about the people side of the business in that way requires them to reconfigure their brain and their priorities. It's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to point out. It's much more difficult to get everybody moving and focused in the right direction.
I'm going to throw another kind of a curveball at you, and that is, since COVID, the larger companies that you like, some of the ones that you've worked with, how are they dealing with getting and what challenges has it brought them on getting people back into the office? And now the federal government is putting similar challenges of getting everybody back to the office. They don't want to come back to the office,
Yeah.
and yet, how do you build? Because it seems to me with a big organization, trying to create these bonds with employees, trying to have this leadership roles, trying to do all that with home-based agents is probably nearly impossible compared to getting people back in the office. I don't know if you
Yeah.
agree with that or not. So that's my question. What are companies doing to get people back in the office? How challenging has that been? And does it matter?
Yeah, this is also a really good question from my perspective. I think what I'd like to do is maybe start with a little bit of my own biases around the question about work from home versus work from office. So I am introverted by nature. What that means for me in particular is I don't have to be in a work setting. I don't require that, in-person interaction for me to be effective or to feel fulfilled. But half of the population is more extroverted and they actually enjoy, the water cooler talk and the connections that are made when you're in person. I don't mind that. I don't mind, working in an in-person teaming environment, but I don't need it. I don't need it to be effective or successful. I think organizations, there are a couple of motivations for them wanting to get people back to office. But, again, the world, according to Jeff, in my opinion, is very much that it's about control versus results. And I say that because I don't think there's been any data or studies done around are in-person teams more effective than virtual teams. I don't think there's any evidence to say that that's true. So I don't know that there's a real, quote unquote, business justification for making people go back to the office. So I want to start there. I also don't object when a company says we want our people back in the office. I don't object to that. I don't think that it's wrong. I think the problem, Marco, is people have tasted the freedom of working from home, right? One of my objections to going into the office, especially if you live in a metro area, is you're going to spend an hour or two or more commuting. Well, that's dead time for everyone. It's dead time for me and it's dead time for my employer. We're not producing anything, but we have to do it on a daily basis. To me, that seems like a really large waste. But now that we've had the opportunity to work from home, we not only understand that that's wasted time unless you're taking mass transit, but we've also lost opportunities. I'm not able to do my laundry. I'm not able to spend time with my kids and my family. I'm not able to take care of my household. And so, in many ways, that commute time is more expensive for me as an individual. It doesn't cost the company anything. So, the organization is getting the benefit of me showing up and work, and there is a cost to me. Your question about the challenges that organizations are having getting people back to work, I think, resides around that. The organization could say, we want people to come back because we want the control if they're being honest about it, right? We want to be able to have that direct observation of the workflow and the work product. But what they're not doing is they're not saying, this is why it's good for you, the employee. This is what we're going to give to you. This is the benefit you get out of coming to work each day and showing up in the office as opposed to just doing your job. And I think once organizations crack that particular code and figure out that they've got to, the word that's coming to mind is WIFM. Have you heard that before? The WIFM?
No.
It's an acronym. It's WIIFM. WIIFM. It stands for what's in it for
What's
me.
in it for me? Yeah.
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
And so I don't think organizations have taken the WIFM perspective on behalf of the employees to say, we're going to get you something because you're coming to the office that you can't get from home. And now the employees are going to feel at least a little more balanced in giving up that extra time that they now are sort of hyper aware of is available to them. And I think until they crack that code, the draw to get people back into the office is going to be tough.
Yeah. I, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to go back to work from an office anymore. But so I get exactly where you're coming from. But if I was running uh, I mean, I run a pretty big and I have my people all over the world, but there are like my call center staff, they're all in a call center in the Philippines.
Mhm.
My IT staff, they're all in a facility in India. Um, Not every, they're not all working from home, and those that manage the call center team, I think, well, anyway, it's a challenge because people would certainly, like you say, would rather have more of those freedoms. Um, so, but there is a benefit. I think the biggest benefit of working there's brain power that happens when people work and have meetings and it's not all virtual and so on they bounce off each other. The energy bounces off of each other, and things can happen a lot faster, and relationships can be real versus all of the home-based agents, so or home-based staff rather. Anyway, moving on to another subject. What are some, when it comes to sales strategies, psychometrics, as you say, play a
Mhm.
big role in your work. How do you psychological insights impact business decisions and buying behaviors?
Yeah, for me, the perspective is all about not only the connection in the process, but also what I would call the diagnostic in the sell-in engagement. What I mean by that is I'll give you sort of an individual level, and then we'll talk about it at the enterprise level as well, and hopefully that'll make sense after I get through it. We all have a psychological profile. We all have a psychological profile. The good news with psychometrics is it operationalizes that. It allows us to put people in categories. This is not meant to pigeonhole people, but in some ways to give us a really good insight in terms of how do people like to be sold to? What are the most influential ways to connect and close a prospect? Um, and the modeling is really simple. At the high level, let's talk about this. If you have the ability to engage with a prospect and in a minute or just a couple of minutes, understand how they want to be communicated with, how they want to be sold, how they want to be presented with information, and maybe more importantly, how they want to be processed in a closing type of engagement. If you know that, it's like having the keys to the kingdom, right? It makes selling really easy. If you don't know those things, what you do is you rely on the behaviors and your approaches that have maybe worked in the past. And so you have a muted level of effectiveness when you have that generic one size fits all. You have an expanded level of effectiveness when you go in with a lot more precision in terms of how you engage with your prospects. So that's the sort of high level picture. Now, let me break that down a little bit. One of my favorite psychometrics that we use at iBridge, it's one of a couple that we use. We often use these at larger organizations. We picked this particular one because it's easy to use and it's easy to learn. And so organizations have what I would call a lower level of resistance to it because it has an efficacy without it being too hard to implement. That model is DISC. DISC is a psychometric that a lot of people have heard of. We're an award-winning partner with a company called Wiley who publishes DISC, and it breaks personality types into a quadrant, D, I, S, and C. If you're a D-type prospect, a dominant type prospect, what you're really interested in, what you're motivated by, and what you're going to be influenced by is results first and activity second. So I want to know that you're going to get done the thing that I need you to get done, and I want to know that you're going to be able to get to it fast. Okay. If I'm a C type conscientiousness salesperson, I have a tendency to speak in a very sort of moderated way. My priorities are accuracy and thoroughness and comprehensiveness. So I'm going to show up to that sale and I'm going to give you all of the details, the mind-numbing details. I'm going to give you the data. I'm going to give you all of the justification. Well, if you're a D type receiving that, you're already done with the conversation before that salesperson is even a tenth of the way into their pitch. So the C type's person ability to influence a D is very, very low. What's the antidote to that? Well, if the C person sits back and goes, oh, what you need me to do is get to the bottom line, tell you how much it's going to cost, tell you how long it's going to take, and then ask you to buy from me. Like go to the close, make things happen. Well, if I can make that adaptation, my ability to sell to you goes up a lot. What that means I have to do, I have to dial down my preferences and my style. My need to share comprehensive amounts of information with you, I've got to control and contain that. I have it available. If you ask me those questions, I've got the answers for you. but I have to dial down my need to tell you all of that before you go through the decision-making process. That's one example across this quadrant. There are several others.
It reminds
Uh,
me of one of my sales guys. He's like a professor, and he wants to just
yeah.
give you all the information, and he's losing almost all of his client, the attention of most people because they just can't. They're not interested in hearing every darn detail.
And so listen, let's use that example. If he were selling, so he's probably a C type. I love the professor analogy because that
Yep.
really works here. In the disc world, that's the C type or conscientiousness type. Professor's a good way to think about that. Very, very super high priority around knowledge and information, right? If he's selling to another C type, another professor, that person is going to love the fact that he's got this depth of knowledge and his precision in his language, and he's thorough and he's comprehensive. In other words, what's happening is they're creating an interpersonal connection that they both relate to because they're on the same frequency. But something else really important is happening. The prospect, who's a C type, has a much easier time extending trust to that person because they see them as being similar to themselves, right?
Hmm. Yep.
But now take that same scenario if I'm a D type person, right? And you've got all of the knowledge and you're very thorough and you're very comprehensive. I don't trust you. Yeah, you're smart, but can you get the job done? Because that's my priority. I'm worried you can't get anything done because you're so deep in the weeds. And so that asset that you have of being really knowledgeable actually becomes a liability in the sales process because you haven't adapted to your prospect.
Right.
And so psychometrics allow salespeople to read, right, evaluate their prospect in a really, really short order, and then make those adaptations to be an effective connector and an effective communicator, which leads them to be effective closers.
What about this is an interesting challenge. I mean, if you've got like the sales calls are semi webinars, there's multiple people on each sales call. Obviously, that means multiple personalities. How do you try to appease them all and get to the close eventually?
Yeah, yeah. This is a fun question. My answer is talk to all of them in their own frequency. That's the answer. When you segregate out certain types, let's say, for example, your preference is a D type, right? Talking fast, making things happen, making decisions, very decisive. Let's go. I just need the information I need to make a decision. I don't need all the background. I don't need this. Well, if that is your style, you're going to naturally show up and that's how you're going to present. Well, what you've done is you've excluded 75% of the audience.
Hmm.
And so my recommendation there is go in and be yourself naturally, give your normal pitch, and then pull back and consider what the other styles need, and then come back and do it again in their style.
Yeah. Or yeah, have maybe different parts of the presentation. You do it in different styles
Exactly
so
right.
that you're quick and fast in some areas and then you're detailed in a couple of others. And yeah, that makes sense. Try to assume that you've got all four types of prospects on the call, or maybe you figured that out in a little bit of a discovery at the beginning. And based on your discovery, you're going to try to appease multiple types as you go through.
Well,
Um,
here's what I would do, Marco, just based on what you said there. If you're having pre-discovery conversations and you can assess your audiences, then I would invite by type. All right. I would invite, instead of doing one big seminar, I would do four smaller seminars. And then I would put them by those groupings and then I would present to them in their style.
mhm. It's a good idea. Yeah, have the breakout rooms. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to double click on this a little bit further. And I'm sorry to nerd out on this, but you've got my brain popping here. Understanding the relationship to the close process is super important in this conversation. Again, if we're talking about these D types, they want to be decisive. They want you to push them to be decisive. Like, I've given you the information. What decision are you about to make? If you took that same approach to a C type or an S type, a steadiness type, what you're going to get is a rejection, not because they don't like your product, not because they don't like your price, not because they don't like your proposition, because you're trying to push them to make a decision before they're ready. And if you don't recognize that, your sales process becomes the objection. And that's much, much harder to solve for.
Hmm.
So if you're a D-type salesperson, and a lot of salespeople are, they're like, making things happen. And you push a C-type, a conscientiousness, or an S-type, a steadiness, to make a decision too soon, the decision they're going to make is no. So you've got to have some patience. And you are probably going to get to a place where you're exhausted in terms of all of the information needs that a C-type wants. They're gonna want you to feed them every detail, every perspective. Why? Because accuracy in decision making is their priority. Well, if you don't honor that need for information, you will lose the sale. And it won't be because of your product or your price or your position in the market. It will be because of your approach.
Wow. That, yeah, you can't just do the same pitch for all, I guess, huh?
100%. 100%. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that I would take that up to the enterprise level. A lot of my sales background has been specifically selling into enterprise. And anybody who's ever held that kind of role is going to immediately recognize what I'm about to say. When selling into enterprise, there are often multiple decision makers from multiple departments or divisions. If you don't recognize in this very same sort of segmentation mentality, when we're segmenting by personality type, if you don't understand the information needs and the process needs of the individuals, you're likely going to get one or two of those people saying this isn't the right choice for us. And those people are often very influential and, will lead to you not having further opportunities. So example, a CEO is looking for bottom line results and what's the cost, what's the overhead look like. But what is the HR person concerned about? That you're not going to screw it up, that their employees aren't going to be exposed to a bad experience, that they also are going to get what they're paying for, but what they're worried about on a humanistic or a human-centric perspective is very different. If you don't adjust your information focus for those different audiences, then again you've sort of lost. Let's throw a third decision maker or influencer in the process, the CFO or people from finance. What do they want to know? Right? They're going to be very interested in the analytics and quantitative elements of whatever it is you're selling. As a salesperson, you must be able to command all of those audiences and their information needs and their styles if you want to be effective in selling into enterprise level organizations.
How about that? So, are there any practical ways that a business owner can assess their customer psychology and use it to refine their marketing and sales strategy? What's the, because it's obviously what you're talking about could take years to learn and years of studying your process, which is what you offer in your with your company services. But most small entrepreneurs, where do they go? Where do they start?
Yeah.
Not everybody can afford to hire someone like you.
That's a good question. And I want to challenge you on two fronts. The first one is it does not take years to learn. It takes hours to learn,
Okay.
not years. And so I think probably correcting for that perspective or perception is probably an important one. One of the reasons we use DISC is because it doesn't take years. It doesn't even take months. It takes hours, and once you've got it, then you get better by using it. So there's a practicum component, if you will. Your second question is where do business owners get that kind of information? Certainly they can come to iBridged and we'll do assessments for them. These assessments are also available on the open market. Um, what we offer as an organization is an enterprise level psychometric assessment. And what's really awesome about that, thank you for pointing out the website. Um, we offer a product called Catalyst through Wiley, which allows whole organizations to assess the individuals and teams, and then those individuals and teams get to see each other's profiles.
Cool.
Yeah,
By the way, folks, if you happen to be on YouTube or Rumble, we're looking at his website, iBridged.com. You can schedule a free discovery call and meet with the team and see if there's an opportunity for them to show you the disc platform and how you understand the different quad of personalities: dominance, consciousness, steadiness, influence, the disc program. And see, what type of what is your avatar? What type of clients do you work with typically? Your company, what who would be your
yeah. We're located out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, so the proximity to Silicon Valley and technology. So we have a lot of tech-based companies, but we also have some very large clients in healthcare and some very large clients in supply chain type operations and businesses. Um, we have some clients in biotechnology. We have some big clients in retail. So yeah,
typically how many employees would a company need to have to look to bring on a firm like yours?
yeah, that's a really good question, because I think the number of employees is one of the variables. Revenue is probably another one. Um, it makes a lot of sense if you've got 500 employees or more, to have a conversation with me. And I say more, meaning, you could have 100,000 employees and it would make a lot of sense to have a conversation with me. One of the reasons why we have the ability to work in such large scale organizations is we have the ability to certify their internal people on the programs that we bring to them. And so once you're certified in five behaviors, or once you're certified in DISC, or in many cases both, and oftentimes it's the HR group, HR business partners, or it's the learning and development folks, or sometimes it's a combination of those. We certify those folks in these programs, and then they're able to implement them internally for a significantly lower cost.
Got it.
Uh,
Now, Jeff,
so
Jeff, a lot of the marketing boost community are smaller entrepreneurs. So if a small business owner, 10, 20 employees, that business owner is struggling with employee engagement and retention, what steps might they take to turn things around?
yeah, my first recommendation in terms of making sure that it's affordable for a group like that would be to set them up on the Catalyst platform, have each of those people do their own assessments, and then they will be able to use that platform on their own. There's no need for an outside consultant. It's a learning platform. They can learn all about their own disc styles. They can learn about other disc styles. And there are playbooks built into this model. And so, really super affordable. That starts at $90 a person. And there's no subscription fees, there's no maintenance fees. It's a one-time cost. And then you get to use the platform, essentially for life. And so that's something that an organization could do to tap into this knowledge base.
That's something you offer on iBridged?
It is. Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an affordable way to get access to some of what you provide without,
Mhm.
the huge investment.
Exactly.
And I say huge, but I mean, because if 500 employees is going to be an investment different than as the $90 per person for a small entrepreneur and so on. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so that's available on your website, folks. Here's some fun questions for you, kind of rapid fire, fun
Okay.
round. What's one book every business leader should read, in your opinion?
Oh, I yeah, I've got a few books that I think people should really read and get to know. Um, the first one is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and that's the Patrick Lencioni teaming model. It focuses on trust, on healthy conflict, on commitment, accountability, and results. It is a fast and easy read. It's written in parable style, so it's enjoyable to read too because it's a bit of a story. But it will give you some really good insights in terms of how do we create a behavioral model, a standard behavioral model that this organization can adopt and then sort of work from. And you don't need an outside consultant to help you do it. Where
What was
where
the name
we
of that again? Can you say that one more time?
Sure, it's called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. My second recommendation is The Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a passion around that book. Some of those habits just really speak to me. And they speak to me because I often find when I'm working with executive level leaders that
Is that
they're
with
often
Robert Schoen or something like that? The author of that?
Stephen
Uh,
Covey
oh, okay. Different
is the
author.
author of Seven Habits. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. And then I recently read, now this one, I say it's recommended. I guess I want to clarify. I nerd out on the subjects in this book. It's called The Human Element. The Human Element. And it is really about the psychology of change and change resistance. And it may be a little too much or a little too deep for, most business leaders. But if you've got the time and the cycles and the interest on really understanding how do I need to influence my team to get them to move to the places that I want them to be, the insights are phenomenal. I tell my friends, it's rare when I read a book and the first couple of chapters and I am just completely locked in.
Wow.
This is one of those books. So those are three that I would recommend off the top.
I've been having so much fun that I forgot to run a promotion for the sponsors of our shows. So, folks, don't go away. I got a whole bunch of more great questions for Jeff. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
It's time to wow, surprise, and impress your clients with the most powerful customer draw card available anywhere. The Marketing Boost Solutions Show is brought to you by Marketing Boost, where you can get valuable travel and restaurant incentives to drive your leads from prospects to paying customers. Now you can offer complimentary hotel stays in over 130 destinations worldwide. Go to marketingboostsolutions.com and try it for free right now.
You just heard from our sponsor, marketingboost.com. Guys, if you're in business for yourself and looking for ways to generate more leads, close more sales, and wow, surprise, and delight your clients, check out marketingboost.com. We're a very affordable program that allows you to wow your clients with complimentary hotel stays in over 130 destinations, restaurant savings vouchers, hotel savings cards that come in increments of $1, $2, $3, and $500. Example, you could use a hotel savings card to reward a client just for booking a online Zoom call with one of your salespeople. And then just for showing up on time, you offer them the reward or the incentive. If they buy your product, you might throw in the bigger incentive, a complimentary hotel stay. There's all kinds of ideas. We show you that within our Facebook group with over 32,000 members and show you ideas on how to use incentives and rewards to engage your clients better. So check out marketingboost.com. Back with Jeff on leadership and all kinds of great ideas here using the psychology to help generate more leads, close more sales, etc. What's a common myth, Jeff, of about leadership or team building that needs to be busted?
I think there are a couple of there, and I would probably segment the audiences. I think one of the common myths about leadership is that leaders have all the answers. I think that's a really common myth. Really good leaders don't have all the answers. Really good leaders have access to the information. And that's a really important distinction because if we build our trust with our leader based on their knowledge, competency, and then they don't have the answer, then, trust is affected. But if the leader doesn't sort of present that air of, I know everything, but I have the ability to go get the information, then we're really comfortable when they say these keywords, I don't know, or I don't have that answer at the moment. And then they finish it up by saying, I'll go get it. So I think that's a myth that probably needs to be, consciously addressed. The myth around teams is that, um, I guess my favorite answer to this is the myth about teams and team building in particular is that team building is effective. Most team building is entertaining during the team building event, and then that's it. The effectiveness of it goes nowhere. The longevity of that, but think of it as an investment because you're probably paying for the event and you're certainly paying for the time, that your team is offline, and probably even some opportunity costs. You could include that. Most team building has very, very little effectiveness going forward. And so if you're going to take a generic approach to team building, you're gonna get a very generic outcome.
Any suggestions on what does work with team building?
Well, and of course I've got my own biases around this, so I don't want to pretend that I don't. Team building, from my perspective, is something that is constructive. In fact, the word building in the term team building is what's really important to me. I want to see teams that are in fact building their structure, their behavioral model, their processes, the things that are actually going to advance the team and its ability to perform. For me, when you focus on those things, then you get a really effective, you get an actual ROI from the team building event.
Hmm. How would you describe, if you had to describe leadership in just 3 words or thereabouts, what would they be? What is leadership?
Yeah. When I think about the word leadership, what often comes up to me is the contrast between leadership and management. A lot of people convolute those two words. They use them synonymously to mean the same thing. But in my world, they're not the same thing at all. Management is about task orientation, right? It's about managing people and processes to get things done. Leadership for me is about creating a vision of a future state. Tying this back to the 7 habits of highly successful people, one of my favorite habits is beginning with the end in mind. The leader should be setting that end and then creating the clarity for others to be attracted and then follow into, that particular destination. One of the academic definitions that's different between these two, management is often one-to-one and leadership is one-to-many. And so when I think about leadership, it is really about moving, teams and organizations from their current state. Where are you today? And then getting them moving towards a desired state. What does that future look like? Where do you want to go? So when I think about leadership, I think, the 3 words that come up for me might be visionary, might be creator, and might be enthusiast, right? We want to create that vision, we want to be enthusiastic, and then we want to drive those things into the team so that the team can move forward. And then I think maybe a fourth might be unblocker. So I'm going to create the vision, I'm going to create the destination. So vision, I'm going to then go get alignment with my audience. How do I get them aligned with that vision? And then the third element is focusing on the execution component. Well, in my world, from a leadership standpoint, I want to push decision making down the organization and as close to the customer as possible. That's where the best decisions are going to get made. To do that, though, the role that I would play from a leadership standpoint is making sure that whatever the blockages are, whatever the impediments are that keep that from happening, that those are removed on behalf of the organization. So that would be the fourth word that I would use.
Wow, thank you.
Mhm.
That's deep. Folks, I'm really excited to tell you about a new product we're launching here. Right now it's in beta, but very soon it'll be open. Is trustbyreviews.com. If you're in business, you need reviews, you need testimonials, and you need them coming in consistently. One of the Harvard studies shows 70% of all buying decisions, the first thing they do is look up your reviews first. And they are looking for your testimonials, and they're looking for fresh ones. If your last review was 6 months ago, that's not going to be very relevant. So trustbyreviews.com, we built a platform to help you solicit more reviews easily, and then guide your clients and push these reviews to wherever you need them most, such as driving them to trustpilot.com, or driving them over to the Better Business Bureau or googlereviews.com or Facebook. And by pushing them in, as you solicit the reviews, and round robin sending them to different third-party review sites via trustbyreviews.com, we help you generate all these third-party reviews that are going to, Google will end up being forced to help these reviews rank your brand, your website, whatever, and help you grow your business with more third-party reviews living on third-party review websites. Check out trustbyreviews.com. Very affordable way to be soliciting and generating a constant flow of new reviews. We're back with Jeff Harnois here, and we're talking about leadership, growth, psychology of sales. And so, Jeff, what would be the best leadership? What's the best piece of leadership or sales advice you've ever received, or, taken into account that now is part of your program?
Gosh, I can think of a couple. Um, the the first piece of advice that is probably common to all salespeople is, don't take no for an answer.
Okay.
I'm laughing about it because it seems obvious and it's kind of fun, but there's an art to not taking no for an answer. There's a way of not taking no for an answer and doing it eloquently and with class. And then there's ways of doing it where it's really rough on the prospect. And so getting good at not taking no for an answer was probably one of the best pieces of advice for two reasons for me. The first one was, early on, I was willing to take no for an answer, and you get the results of taking no for an answer. You don't move forward. And so getting permission, really, because my personality type, wants people to be happy and have harmony. And so when you tell me no, I naturally want to accept that. And so giving myself permission to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something differently and see what that gets me. That was really good. But then also, I think taking it to that next level of, being elegant in not taking no for an answer. I think if I operationalize that, a lot of organizations have, a 3 objection rule. We're not going to take the first no. We're not going to take the second no. We're not going to take the third no. But by the fourth one, we're going to let you go. I don't know if that's good or great or whatever. I like to have sensitivity with the prospect and, kind of gauge their threshold. So that would be one. The second one, the second piece of advice really ties into what we've been talking about, which is, just because you were effective in a certain pitch, a certain style, a certain approach, does not mean that you're going to be effective with everyone. And until you understand what your prospect needs from you, until you learn how to do that, you are literally missing opportunities that are available to you. And so digging deep into the psychometric modeling, learning how to use that to make you more effective, that was probably the single best piece of advice that I've ever received in sales.
Wow. Powerful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, sales is part of every business, right? But many of us are challenged by it. We're afraid of it. We have a vision in our own mind that salespeople are, I don't want to be the salesperson. And it doesn't really matter what business you're in, right? If you're a plumber, chiropractor, doctor, lawyer, uh, whatever you are, if you're not in sales, I mean, we're all in sales, whether you like it or not. So if you're not moving new sales through the door, you're stagnant, and then you start declining, and before you know it, you're out of business. So you've got to think, you've got to be learning how to be more effective at sales. And that's an art, as Jeff pointed out. It's learnable. It's not something that yeah. There's the people that are born with it, so to speak, or so we think. Oh, he's got the gift of gab. Those people talk themselves in and out of sales more than you would imagine. They the sale is done and they keep on talking and lose more sales than they could have if they'd known when to stop and when to ask for the order. It's an art, and so take the time to learn. And let's go take a look one more time at Jeff's website. If I can find it here, Jeff, let me see if I pull it up and we'll share that one more time. Shoot, I'm having trouble with finding my share link. So if you're on Rumble or YouTube, we're looking at iBridged.com. And right away here, there's a schedule a discovery call if you're got 400 or 500 employees or more. And then within here, where would we go here to find that that self-service platform you'd mentioned, Jeff?
Well, if you take a look at the psychometric tab, it's right just above where your cursor is now.
Okay.
Yeah, this will show you the various psychometrics that we use. It'll give you a little more information and a bit of a deeper dive into them. But it's not exactly self-service. You're still going to want to connect with me, and then we'll get you set up on the platform based on the number of employees that you have.
Got it.
Yeah, and that discovery call, I think it's probably assumed. I want to make it explicit. There's no charge for the call. We'll spend roughly an hour, whether you use a service of ours or not. Just going through that conversation is going to give you some perspectives and probably some questions that you're going to want to ask or ask your leadership team in terms of how you set your organization up for success going forward. And then, of course, the psychometrics are available, and I'll make those available to you if you desire.
Appreciate that very much. Folks, if you like the content of the show we brought you today, I mean, Jeff, first I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to share the insight and your knowledge with our community. If you've been listening to the show, folks, we want to let you know we love and appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. And it's because we bring people like Jeff with the purpose of trying to, help you, motivate you, guide you, and impress you to keep on moving. Being an entrepreneur is no easy task, and sometimes it's a very lonely road. So I bring people like Jeff to here to try to inspire you to continue to be more successful. Again, thanks for your time. If you like the content we brought you, please give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and share this with another entrepreneur, please. Click the link and share it with somebody who might benefit from this exact conversation that we've had about sales and the psychology of sales. If you liked it, again, share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Marketing Boost Solutions podcast. One of the down below, either here or there, you can click and watch the next show right now. Thank you very much. We'll see you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Boost Solutions podcast with your hosts, Captain Marco Torres. Now it's on you. Take the next step now. Go to marketingboostsolutions.com for more on how you can wow, delight, and surprise your clients with the most amazing draw card on the planet. So stay thirsty, my friends. Stay thirsty for knowledge. See you next time.